"You kissed the wrong man," said the Mafia boss. She thought he was just a handsome bartender. The city air felt wrong. It was thick, tasting of old exhaust and damp pavement, a stark contrast to the sharp, empty cold of the town she'd left behind. Lena Marlowe had been in the city for 3 weeks, and her reflection in the bus window looked hollowed out, her eyes 2 shades darker than she remembered. She was running on lukewarm coffee and the kind of brittle fear that settles deep in the bones. She had arrived with 2 suitcases, a cracked cell phone, and $400 to her name. She'd fled a relationship that had sanded her down to nothing, and a family home drowning in debt letters she could no longer bear to open. The escape had felt like survival, but the city felt like a different kind of trap. Her apartment was a 5th-floor walk-up with peeling paint and a radiator that banged like a hammer at 3 in the morning. The rent was criminal. To meet it, Lena had found work at the Ember Line. On paper, it was a miracle, a luxury bar in a neighborhood where the buildings had names instead of numbers. In reality, it was a grueling performance. She worked double shifts 5 nights a week, her feet aching through the thin soles of her required black shoes. The Ember Line was all low lighting, dark mahogany, and the scent of expensive whiskey and richer perfume. The patrons were men in tailored suits and women whose jewelry cost more than Lena's college debt. She was overwhelmed, but she was determined to stay invisible. She was just a waitress, a ghost refilling glasses and clearing plates. She kept her eyes down, her voice soft, her smile polite and empty. Invisibility was safety. It was how she had survived Troy, her ex, by making herself small. She avoided the attention that always led to cruelty, but even with her eyes down, she had started to notice him. He wasn't like the other bartenders, who were slick and fast, all flashing smiles and practice flair while they flipped bottles. This man was different. He was usually there on the busiest nights, standing at the far end of the bar, mostly polishing glasses or stocking inventory. He seemed too refined to belong there, moving with an economy of motion that was almost silent. He wore the same simple black button-down as the others, but on him, it looked intentional, severe. He was handsome, in a way that hurt to look at directly, sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw, and dark hair. He was quiet, deeply observant, and when he did look up, his eyes, a startling, intense green, swept the room with a gaze that didn't just see things, it assessed them. He exuded a silent authority that made the other staff give him a wide berth and the patrons treat him with a respect they didn't afford the other servers. Lena found herself tracking him, her gaze catching on the way his hands moved, steady, capable, and clean. She was finishing a 14-hour shift, her body humming with exhaustion. When the incident happened, it was late, past 1 in the morning, and the remaining crowd was loud and careless. A man at table 7, a wealthy regular who always treated the staff like furniture, had been ordering $50 glasses of scotch for hours. He signaled Lena over, his eyes glassy. "Another one, sweetheart," he slurred, his hand fumbling for his wallet. "Of course, sir," Lena murmured, reaching for the empty glass. He grabbed her wrist instead. "In a hurry? Slow down, sit with me." Lena froze, the familiar cold panic rising in her throat. "Sir, I have to—" His grip tightened, and his other hand snaked out, landing hot and heavy on the curve of her waist, pulling her off balance toward his lap. "I said sit down. A pretty thing like you shouldn't be working so hard." She tried to pull away, her pleas coming out as a breathless squeak. She saw the floor manager start to move, saw the security guard by the door tense, but they were too far away. It happened in less than a second. The bartender was suddenly there. He hadn't run. He had simply appeared, a shadow detaching itself from the bar. He said nothing. He didn't look at Lena. His focus was entirely on the drunk customer. He took the man's hand, the one clamped on Lena's waist, and gripped it. Then he twisted. There was no sound of a break, just a dull, sickening pop and a short, choked gasp from the customer. The man's face went bone white, his eyes wide with sudden, sober shock. The bartender's expression didn't change. His eyes were flat, cold as chips of ice. He leaned in, his voice too low for Lena to hear, but the customer nodded frantically, sweat beading on his forehead. Still holding the man's ruined wrist, the bartender escorted him from his chair, through the crowded room and straight out the front door, handing him off to the security guard with a quiet word. The entire club seemed to exhale. Lena stood shaking, her wrist throbbing where the man had grabbed her. Adrenaline made her vision swim. No one had ever stepped in like that. Not for her. Troy had done worse, and people had just watched. She needed air. She saw the bartender bypass the bar and head toward the staff exit. On pure, unthinking impulse, she followed him. The door opened into a narrow, dark alley slick with a light drizzle. The smell of damp brick and garbage was sharp. He was 10 feet away, his back to her, shrugging off his uniform jacket. He pulled a cigarette from a silver case and lit it, the small flame illuminating the hard line of his jaw. "Thank you," Lena said. Her voice sounded thin. He turned slowly. The shadows in the alley clung to him, but his green eyes seemed to catch the distant streetlight. He took a slow drag from the cigarette, the cherry glowing red, and watched her. He didn't smile. He didn't say, "You're welcome." He just waited. She was trembling, a confusing mix of adrenaline, gratitude, and a sudden sharp spike of desire that terrified her. He was dangerous. The way he'd moved, the clinical precision of that injury, it was terrifying. But he had used it for her. He had protected her. She didn't know what to do. So she walked toward him, her footsteps echoing in the small space. He remained perfectly still, watching her approach as if she were a nervous animal. She stopped right in front of him, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body and smell the clean scent of soap beneath the tobacco smoke. She looked up at his face, at his mouth. And then, fueled by a reckless energy she hadn't felt in years, she rose onto her toes, put her hand on his chest, feeling the hard muscle through his shirt, and kissed him. It was impulsive and clumsy, a desperate press of her lips against his. For a second, he allowed it. His lips were firm, unmoving, tasting faintly of smoke. He accepted the kiss, his body remaining completely static, his hands staying at his sides. He didn't push her away, but he didn't reciprocate. He didn't kiss her back. It was like kissing a beautiful, cold statue. The lack of response was a shock, colder than the rain. She pulled back, her cheeks burning hot with a sudden, agonizing wave of humiliation. His eyes were fixed on hers, intense and unreadable in the dim light. He hadn't moved, but his gaze pinned her to the spot. "You kissed the wrong man," he said. His voice was a low, smooth baritone, devoid of any emotion. It wasn't an insult. It was a statement of fact. Embarrassment flooded her, drowning the last of the adrenaline. She felt stupid, small, and exposed. I'm sorry," she stammered, backing away. Thank you." She turned and fled, pushing back through the heavy door into the warmth and noise of the bar. Not looking back, she grabbed her jacket from the staff room, clocked out, and ran the 6 blocks to her apartment, the cryptic words echoing in her head. "You kissed the wrong man." Dario Vascari watched her go, the red glow of his cigarette illuminating the faint smirk on his lips. He raised his fingers and touched his mouth where she had kissed him. He'd been using the Ember Line as a quiet place to observe his operations, to root out the traitors he knew were skimming from him. He came in, polished a few glasses, and listened. No one looked twice at the help. Until tonight, he hadn't expected the waitress, Lena Marlowe, according to his payroll, to have that much fire in her. He had seen the terror when the drunk put his hands on her, that familiar look of someone used to being prey. But then, in the alley, she had shown something else. Boldness, vulnerability. It intrigued him. It was a combination he hadn't seen in a long time. He finished his cigarette, crushing it under his heel, and pulled out his phone. He dialed a number. "Rocco," he said when the line clicked. "I have a new task, a waitress at the Ember Line. Lena Marlowe, I want surveillance on her. Full time." He paused, listening to the city sounds. Find out everything, especially about the ex-boyfriend she ran from in her hometown. I want to know what she's afraid of." He listened again. "No, you don't touch her. This is protection. She's not to be harmed." He hung up, his gaze settling on the alley door she had disappeared through. Something about her felt pure, untouched by the filth he lived in every day. He wanted to keep it that way. Lena locked the 3 deadbolts on her apartment door, her heart still hammering against her ribs. The apartment was cold. She leaned against the door, sliding down until she was sitting on the linoleum floor. She replayed the night over and over. The customer's sweaty grip, the bartender's cold efficiency, and the kiss. God, the kiss. She covered her burning face with her hands. What had she been thinking? He was probably laughing at her. You kissed the wrong man. What did it mean? That he was taken? That he wasn't interested? Or was it a warning? He was magnetic. Yes, but he was also terrifying. The way he'd handled that man, it wasn't normal. She felt conflicted, drawn to the power that had protected her, but repulsed by the coldness that accompanied it. She went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. The next day, she dreaded her shift. She walked into the Ember Line expecting to be fired, or at least mocked, but the bartender wasn't there. The atmosphere was normal. She was polishing cutlery in the back station when Maya, another waitress, leaned in. "So," Maya whispered, "you were the cause of the excitement last night." Lena flinched. "I didn't mean to." "Honey, you did us all a favor. Harrison is a pig, but that's not what I'm talking about." Maya's eyes glittered. "He stepped in. The bartender. Yeah, he was very kind," Lena said lamely. Maya laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Kind, sweetheart, he's not a bartender. He's hardly ever here. He just shows up sometimes, polishes some glasses, stares." She lowered her voice even more, though no one was around. "He's connected to the owner, the real owner." Lena paused, a fork halfway to the tray. "The owner? I've never seen him." "No one has. Not really. They just call him Mr. Viscari. He owns this place, and half the block. Apparently, they say he's not someone you ever want to meet. They say he's dangerous." "And he," Maya said, jerking her chin toward the empty spot at the end of the bar, "is the owner's right hand, or his brother, or something. Point is, he's not just some guy." A chill snaked down Lena's spine. Dangerous. The word resonated with what she'd seen. The kiss in the alley suddenly felt infinitely more reckless. That night, the bar was tense. The floor manager was sweating, and the security detail was doubled. Lena felt the shift in the air before she saw the cause. Around 11 o'clock, the low murmur of the room died. The music seemed to dip in volume. Lena was dropping a check at a table near the entrance when the front doors opened. It was him. But it wasn't the man in the simple black button-down. This man was wearing a tailored black suit that looked like it was spun from shadows, a crisp white shirt, and no tie. His hair was perfectly styled. He was flanked by 2 other men, built like mountains, also in suits. He wasn't polishing glasses. He was commanding the room. He didn't look at the patrons. He walked straight to the floor manager, who looked pale, and began speaking in a low, authoritative voice. Lena's heart didn't just drop, it stopped. She was holding a small black tray, and her shaking hands fumbled, sending a water glass tumbling to the floor. It shattered, the sound echoing loudly in the sudden quiet. Every head turned, his green eyes, cold and assessing, swept past the broken glass and locked directly onto hers. There was no recognition, no warmth, just the same intense, calculating stare from the alley. Lena's blood turned to ice. She looked at the man in the $1,000 suit, the man giving orders, the man radiating an aura of absolute, terrifying power. Maya was wrong. He wasn't connected to the owner. He was the owner, and he was infinitely more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. For 2 nights, Lena worked in a state of muted terror. He was there, but he kept his distance. He sat in a dark booth with other men in suits, his presence a heavy weight that seemed to suck the oxygen from the room. He never looked at her. The staff moved around him with a jittery, unnatural deference. Lena focused on her tables, on the polished wood of her tray, on the burn of her tired feet. She felt his presence like a change in barometric pressure. On the third night, just as she was wiping down her station at 3 a.m, the floor manager, a man she had barely spoken 10 words to, approached her. "Marlowe," he said, his eyes nervously flicking toward the stairs. "Mister, Viscari would like a word with you in his office." Lena's stomach hollowed out. "Now? Now." She untied her apron, her hands shaking so badly she fumbled the knot. She hung it on the hook, smoothed her black shirt, and walked toward the unmarked door that led to the private upper levels. Each step felt like wading through wet cement. She had been fired. Or worse, she had kissed the owner of the Emberline, a man who looked like he could break people for sport, and now he was going to... What? She knocked. "Come in." The voice was the same low baritone from the alley. She pushed the door open. The office was the opposite of the bar. It was silent, vast, and modern. One wall was a sheet of glass overlooking the city lights. The desk was a slab of dark, polished wood, completely empty save for a laptop and a single unlit lamp. Dario Viscari stood by the window, his suit jacket off, his white shirt sleeves rolled up his forearms. He was looking out at the skyline. "Close the door," he said. Not turning, she did, the click of the latch sounding impossibly loud. He turned to face her. In the dim light from the city, his green eyes were shadowed but intense. He gestured to a leather chair. "Please sit." She remained standing. "Am I being fired, sir?" The hint of a smile touched his mouth. "No, Lena, you are not being fired." He moved from the window to a small, hidden bar in the wall, pulling out a heavy crystal decanter. "Drink?" "No, thank you." He poured a small amount of amber liquid into a glass for himself, but didn't drink it. He leaned against the bar, facing her, the picture of casual power. "I wanted to apologize," he said. Lena blinked, confused. For what? For my words in the alley the other night. They were cryptic. I was not myself. "You're the owner," she said flatly. It wasn't a question. "I am." He swirled the glass. "I own this building, and several others." He glossed over the other businesses with a vague gesture. "The Emberline is a particular interest of mine. I find it useful to see the operations from the ground level, hence the bartender attire." The silence stretched. Lena's fear was slowly being replaced by a simmering spark of indignation. He had been playing a game. "Why?" she asked, her voice quiet but firm. "Why did you let me do that? Why did you let me kiss you if you were... this?" She gestured around the expensive room. At him. Dario looked down at the glass in his hand, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his features. He looked back up, his gaze meeting hers directly. The intensity of it made her want to step back. "Because it felt good," he said, his voice low and simple, and rare. The admission hung in the air between them, more intimate than the kiss itself. He wasn't mocking her. He wasn't toying with her. It was a stark, unvarnished truth. Lena's cheeks flushed. She felt that same pull she'd felt in the alley, a dangerous, magnetic current. He took a step toward her. "The man who bothered you," he said. "He won't be returning to this bar or any other establishment I own. You have my word." She nodded, her throat tight. "Thank you for that. Go home, Lena. Get some rest." It was a dismissal, but it sounded almost like a kindness. She left the office, her legs unsteady, his words echoing in her mind, because it felt good and rare. The days that followed settled into a strange, tense routine. Dario, she couldn't think of him as Mr. Viscari, began to show up more often. He no longer wore the bartender's uniform, but he didn't always wear the suit. Sometimes he was in dark jeans and a cashmere sweater, sitting at the bar, nursing a single espresso, watching. His protection became a silent, heavy blanket. One evening, a man from a rowdy bachelor party grabbed her arm as she passed, slurring a crude request. Lena tensed, ready to pull away. But before she could, The man's eyes flickered past her shoulder and his face went pale. He released her immediately, his hand snapping back. "My apologies, miss," he stammered, his eyes wide with a sudden, chemical-free sobriety. Lena turned. Dario was at the far end of the bar, staring at them. He wasn't scowling. His expression was perfectly neutral. He just watched. The man and his entire party paid their bill in cash and left 5 minutes later. Then the flowers started. The first time, she came home to a small, plain white box outside her apartment door. Inside was a cluster of delicate white freesias. There was no note. She put them in a water glass, their clean, sweet scent filling her tiny kitchen. She knew, with a certainty that frightened her, who had sent them. 2 days later, a small pot of lavender. A week after that, a single, perfect white orchid, anonymous yet completely, unmistakably him. Lena was unsure how to respond. She was living in a state of high alert, but not entirely from fear. She was softening. His quiet, persistent presence was the opposite of Troy's. Troy's attention had been a spotlight, demanding and hot, exposing her flaws and punishing her for them. Dario's attention was a shadow, a protective coolness that asked nothing of her. He just watched. She was starting to feel safe. And that, more than anything, terrified her. She was a week from her first full paycheck, calculating if she could afford to buy a new pair of shoes. When her phone buzzed in her apron pocket, she pulled it out, expecting a low balance alert from her bank. It was a text from a number she didn't recognize. "I know where you are. Lena, you can't hide from me." The air rushed from her lungs. Her vision tunneled. Troy, he had found her. The bar, the customers, the scent of whiskey and citrus. It all faded. She was back in that small town, back in his car, his voice rattling her ribs as he screamed at her for being 5 minutes late. She gripped the edge of the service station, her knuckles white. She felt sick. "Lena?" She jumped, nearly dropping the phone. Dario was standing beside her. He hadn't been there a second ago. He moved like smoke. "You're pale," he stated. He wasn't asking. "I'm fine," she whispered, shoving the phone back into her pocket. "Just tired." She tried to move past him, but he blocked her, his body a solid wall. He didn't touch her. He just stood there. "You're shaking." "Please, I have a table." She lied, her voice trembling. His green eyes narrowed, scanning her face with an unnerving precision. He saw too much. He always saw too much. "Who is he?" Dario asked, his voice soft, almost gentle. That gentleness broke her. A choked sob ripped from her chest. Tears she hadn't let herself cry for months blurred her vision. She clapped a hand over her mouth, horrified to be breaking down in the middle of the bar. He took her arm, his grip firm but not painful. "This way." He didn't take her to his office. He led her through the kitchen, out the back delivery door, and into the same alley where she had kissed him. The night air was cold, and she gasped, the chill hitting her wet cheeks. "What's his name?" Dario asked. He stood in front of her, his body shielding her from the door, from the world. She shook her head, unable to speak. "Lena." He said her name with a quiet authority that demanded an answer. "Who did this to you? Who has you this afraid?" "Troy," she finally whispered, the name tasting like ash. "My ex-boyfriend. I ran from him. I left. I left everything. I thought I was safe here. I thought he'd never find me." She broke down then, the whole story pouring out of her in a torrent of shame and fear, the manipulation, the isolation from her friends, the debts he'd racked up in her name, the way he'd backed her into a corner until she felt like she was nothing. The night she'd finally packed a bag and bought a one-way bus ticket while he was passed out. "He texted me," she sobbed, finally looking up at him. "He knows where I am. He'll..." She couldn't finish. Dario's expression had not changed, but his eyes had gone dark, the vibrant green turning to a cold, hard jade. He was perfectly still. When she finished, he simply nodded, as if she had just confirmed something he already suspected. "Go home," he said. "What? I can't. My shift." "Rocco will drive you." He pulled out his phone and typed a message. A moment later, One of the large men who was always with him, the one with the scarred eyebrow, appeared at the alley door. "See that she gets inside her apartment safely. Wait outside until I call." Rocco nodded. "Yes, boss." Lena was too stunned and exhausted to argue. She let the mountain of a man lead her to a black sedan and drove her home in a complete, unnerving silence. Dario remained in the alley, his phone to his ear. "I have a name," he said. "Troy, last name unknown. Find him. He has ties to loan sharks and minor gangs. Find out who they are. Find out where he sleeps. I want to know every move he makes." He paused. "And double the surveillance on Lena's apartment. Full perimeter. I want him taken before he gets within a block of her." "Understood?" He hung up and stared at the damp brick wall. He had wanted to protect her purity. Now, he was going to have to drag her abuser through the filth. For the next 2 days. Lena lived in a fog of her old fear. Every footstep in the hallway of her building made her jump. Every text alert made her heart stop. She went to work, and Dario was there, a silent sentinel. He said nothing about what she had told him. He just watched. At the end of her shift on the second night, she was walking the 6 blocks home. She had refused another ride from Rocco, needing the illusion of normalcy. She was halfway there when the same black sedan she'd ridden in pulled up to the curb beside her. The back window lowered. It was Dario. "Get in," he said. "I can walk. It's 3 a.m. and you're terrified. Get in the car, Lena." She got in. The interior was silent, smelling of rich leather. The car pulled smoothly into traffic. They drove for several minutes without speaking. The only sound, the quiet hum of the engine. The car was a vault, insulating them from the city. She looked at his profile in the dark, the hard line of his jaw, the straight nose. He was staring ahead at the road. "Why are you helping me?" she finally asked, the question escaping her before she could stop it. Dario was quiet for a long moment. He turned his head, his eyes meeting hers in the darkness of the car. "Because," he said, his voice a low rumble, "I don't like seeing good things hurt." His answer was so simple, so unexpected, that it stole her breath. He wasn't saying she was good. It was a principle, a code. It felt more honest than any compliment. He was still looking at her, his gaze unwavering. The air in the car thickened, charged with the same energy from his office. He hadn't moved, but she felt him closing the distance. She saw his eyes drop to her mouth. She knew he was going to kiss her. And she knew, this time, he would kiss her back. He leaned in, slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She saw the intent in his eyes. He raised a hand, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. His touch was light, almost reverent, but it sent a jolt of heat straight through her. He was inches away. She could smell the faint, clean scent of his cologne. She turned her head. "I can't," she whispered, her voice breaking. Dario stopped. His hand lingered by her face for a second, then dropped. He leaned back into his seat, his jaw tight. He wasn't angry. He looked accepting. He understood. He was afraid of trusting too fast. She was afraid of trusting at all. The rest of the ride was silent. He pulled up to her apartment. Rocco was already there, parked in an unmarked car across the street. Dario didn't get out. "You're safe," he said. It was a promise. "He won't get to you." She nodded, fumbling for the door handle. "Good night, Dario." She ran up the 5 flights of stairs, her heart hammering for a different reason. She got inside, locked the 3 deadbolts, and leaned against the door. Her eyes closed. She had wanted him to kiss her. She had been desperate for it, and it scared her more than Troy. She took a shower, trying to wash away the fear and the confusion. She put on an old t-shirt and climbed into bed. But she was wide awake. She heard the faint rumble of a truck outside, a car door slamming, normal city sounds. Then she heard a different sound, a soft scrape, right outside her apartment door. She sat bolt upright, her blood freezing. She held her breath. It came again, a metallic click, as someone jimmied the cheap lock. She scrambled off the bed, backing away, her hand over her mouth to stifle a scream. She looked around wildly for a weapon, a lamp, a book. The 3rd deadbolt snapped. The door splintered open, cracking near the handle. It flew inward, and a man stumbled into the dark apartment. Troy. He was thinner than she remembered, his eyes wild and strung out. "There you are, you bitch," he hissed, lunging for her. Lena screamed. Before Troy could take 2 steps, 2 shadows detached themselves from the hallway behind him. Rocco and another man were on him in an instant. It wasn't a fight, it was a removal. Rocco grabbed Troy from behind in a chokehold, lifting him off his feet. The other man landed too fast, brutal punches to Troy's stomach. Troy didn't even have time to yell. He was dragged out of the apartment as quickly as he had entered. Lena was hyperventilating, pressed against the far wall, her entire body shaking so hard she couldn't stand. The hallway was silent. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, heavy. Dario appeared in the shattered doorway. He was in the same clothes from the car. He looked past her, his eyes scanning the room, checking for other threats, satisfied it was clear. His gaze finally landed on her. He saw her, trembling and pale, and his face hardened into a mask of cold fury. He stepped fully into the room. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice lethally calm. She shook her head, unable to speak. He nodded once. He turned to leave, but paused. He flexed his right hand. Lena's eyes followed the movement. His knuckles were split and smeared with blood. He had not come with his men. He had shown up last. Dario did not move from the doorway for a full 10 seconds. He just looked at her, a small, trembling figure against the far wall of her violated apartment. The fury in his eyes was a cold, banked fire. It was not hot or explosive. It was absolute. He finally stepped back into the hall and spoke in a low voice to Rocco. "Get him out of the building. Use the service elevator. I want him conscious and I want him clean. No marks." He paused. Yet. He turned back to Lena. His gaze swept over the splintered doorframe, the muddy footprints on her floor. He walked over to her, his movements economical and precise. He did not reach for her. He did not offer comfort. He was still in tactical mode. "Pack a bag," he said, his voice flat. Lena flinched, the command hitting her like a slap. "What?" "You are not staying here tonight. It is not secure. Pack a bag. Essentials only. We are leaving in 5 minutes." "Leaving? Leaving where? I cannot." She was exhausted, her adrenaline crashing, leaving her limbs feeling heavy and stupid. "You are coming with me," he stated. He was not asking. He walked into her tiny kitchen, opened a cabinet, and pulled out a trash bag. He began sweeping the items from her nightstand into it. A book, a tube of lotion, her phone charger. The clinical efficiency of it broke her paralysis. "Stop," she said, her voice shaking. "Stop, you cannot just come in here and pack my things. This is what he used to do. He would decide we were leaving, and I had to—" Dario stopped. He dropped the bag and held up his hands, the bloody knuckles a stark contrast to his calm gesture. He was not Troy. He was not angry or erratic. He was contained. "You are right," he said. His voice was softer now. "I apologize." He looked at the broken door. "But you cannot stay here. Your lock is broken. He knows where you live. He will be back, or he will send others. You are not safe in this building." She was trapped. He was right. "Where will I go?" she whispered, tears of frustration stinging her eyes. "A hotel?" "No hotel is secure enough. You will stay with me, at my penthouse. It is the safest place in this city." He looked at her, his eyes unblinking. "I have a guest wing. You will have your own space. I give you my word. Lena, you will be safe there." She had no choice. Numbly, she found her duffel bag and stuffed in a few changes of clothes, her toothbrush, and her wallet. She felt like she was fleeing all over again. The ride to his penthouse was in a different car, a heavy sedan with windows so dark she could not see out. The elevator from the private garage opened directly into his apartment. The word apartment was wrong. It was a cavern of glass and steel. 2 entire floors at the top of the world. The lights of the city glittered below them like a carpet of fallen stars. The furniture was minimal, expensive, and cold. It was beautiful, but it was not a home. It was a fortress. Dario led her down a long, white hallway. "This will be yours," he said, pushing open a door. The guest wing was larger than her entire apartment. It had its own bathroom, a sitting area, and a bed that looked big enough for 6 people. The door locks from the inside. Rocco will be stationed outside the elevator landing. No one comes in or out of this apartment without my clearance. He put her bag on the floor. She stood in the middle of the room, overwhelmed by the sterile luxury, her body vibrating with the aftermath of the attack. "Thank you," she said, because she did not know what else to say. He nodded. "Try to sleep." He started to leave, but paused at the door. "Lena," she looked up. "He will never touch you again," he said. It was not a comfort. It was a vow. He closed the door, leaving her alone in the crushing, expensive silence. The first few days were a tense, awkward dance. Lena stayed in her wing, emerging only when she was sure he was not there, but he was always there. He worked from his office, a glass-walled room overlooking the living area. She would find him in the kitchen in the early morning, dressed in gray sweatpants and a t-shirt, making coffee. He looked younger without the suit, but no less imposing. They would nod. "Good morning." "Morning." The silence was a third person in the room. He had a private chef who prepared meals, but Lena was too intimidated to eat them. She subsisted on toast and tea, feeling like a ghost haunting his perfect life. On the third evening, she found him on the terrace, staring out at the city. She had a blanket wrapped around her. "I cannot stay here," she said quietly. He turned, his face shadowed. "Your apartment is not ready. The door frame had to be rebuilt. I am having a steel door installed and a new security system." "That is not what I mean." She tightened the blanket. "I feel trapped. I appreciate what you are doing. I know you are protecting me. But this," she gestured to the view, "the luxury. This feels like a cage, a nicer cage than Troy's. But I still cannot leave." Dario watched her for a long moment. He walked over to her, stopping a few feet away. "You feel trapped because I brought you here against your will," he said. "I feel trapped because you have guards, and you make decisions about my life without asking me. You are deciding where I live. You are deciding who I see. It feels—" She choked on the word. "It feels like him." His jaw tightened. She saw a flicker of genuine hurt in his eyes before he masked it. "Look at me. Lena," he commanded, his voice low but insistent. She met his gaze. "He controlled you because he was weak. He needed to make you small to feel big." He took a step closer. "I am not him. I have no interest in controlling you. I am protecting you. There is a difference." "How is it different?" she whispered, wanting to believe him. "This," he said. He pointed to the elevator. "The code is 9092. You can call it right now. You can walk out of that door. You can go wherever you want. I will not stop you." She stared at him, stunned. "But I will tell you this," he continued, his voice rough with an emotion she could not name. "If you walk out that door, you will not be safe. What I do, the world I am in, it has enemies. And now, because Troy was stupid, they know you are connected to me. They know I am protecting you. That makes you a target." He looked away, back at the city. "Stay. Not because I am forcing you, but because you are safer here than you have ever been." He turned and walked back inside, leaving her on the terrace. She did not use the code. She stayed. And that one conversation changed everything. He had given her the choice. He had given her the truth, or at least a fragment of it. He was not her ex. He would not control her. That knowledge settled in her chest. And for the first time in years, she felt a genuine seedling of trust. Their cohabitation shifted. It became less awkward. She started joining him for coffee in the mornings. She learned he drank it black, read 3 different newspapers, and was intensely quiet. He learned she liked honey in her tea and had a habit of curling her feet up under her when she sat. They ate dinner together at the massive table. The first time. The silence was tense. The second time. She asked him about a book she saw on his shelf. They talked for an hour. Their chemistry grew in the small, mundane moments. His hand would brush hers as he passed her the salt, a simple touch that sent a jolt up her arm. She found herself sleeping on the oversized couch in the main living room. telling herself it had a better view. The truth was, she felt safer being closer to where he was. One morning, she woke up on the couch to find a heavy cashmere blanket draped over her. She knew she had not gotten it herself. Dario found himself watching her. He was falling for her, and it terrified him. His world was cruel and unforgiving. It was a world of blood and betrayal, inherited from a father he barely respected. He had spent his life hardening himself, building walls. This quiet, gentle woman was dismantling them brick by brick without even trying. He knew his life was a poison, and he was deliberately keeping her close to it. He tried to explain, in fragments. "My family has been in this city for a long time," he told her one night over dinner. "We have complicated businesses, old partnerships. Sometimes those partnerships break." "Is that what Troy got mixed up in?" she asked quietly. "Troy was a fool. He made noise, and he attracted the attention of people who are always watching me, looking for a weakness." "Am I your weakness, Dario?" He looked at her, his green eyes dark with a pain she did not understand. "Yes," he said, and the admission seemed to cost him. "You are?" He was haunted by it. He knew he should send her away, somewhere far off, with a new name and a new life. But the selfish part of him, the part that had been cold for so long, could not let go of the warmth she brought into his sterile world. A week after she had moved in, Lena felt a restless, domestic energy. She was tired of feeling like a guest. She wanted to do something normal. She went into his kitchen. It was a chef's dream, all stainless steel and marble, and decided to cook dinner, a simple pasta. Dario was in his office, on a long, tense phone call. She could hear the muffled rise and fall of his voice. She was chopping vegetables, her mind wandering, thinking about the look in his eyes when he'd called her his weakness. She was not paying attention. The knife was sharper than she was used to. It slipped, slicing deep into the side of her palm. She cried out, a sharp gasp of pain and surprise. The knife clattered onto the marble floor. Blood welled up instantly, bright red, dripping onto the white floor. The door to his office slammed open. Dario was across the kitchen in 2 strides, his speed astonishing. "What happened?" he demanded, his eyes wide with an alarm she had never seen. He was not calm. He was not controlled. He looked, for 1 second, utterly terrified. "I cut myself," she said, her voice shaking as she clutched her hand. "It is stupid. I'm fine." "You are bleeding," he said, his voice rough. He took her arm, his grip firm, and led her to the massive sink. He turned on the cold water and pushed her hand under the stream. He held it there, his other hand supporting her arm, his body language fiercely protective. "It is not that bad," she mumbled, embarrassed. "Be quiet." He kept her hand under the water, his gaze fixed on the wound. After a moment, he shut off the tap, grabbed a clean kitchen towel, and wrapped her hand tightly. "Sit," he ordered, pointing to a stool. He disappeared and returned a moment later with a serious-looking first aid kit. He pulled the stool opposite her, so he was standing between her knees. He gently unwrapped the towel. The bleeding had slowed but not stopped. His movements were methodical, efficient. He cleaned the wound with an antiseptic wipe. She hissed as it stung. "I know," he said, his voice a low rumble. He never looked at her face. He was entirely focused on her hand. His touch was incredibly gentle. His large, calloused fingers, the same ones she had seen stained with blood, were now impossibly tender as he applied a butterfly bandage to close the cut. His brow furrowed in concentration. She was overwhelmed by his closeness. He was standing between her legs, his body heat radiating onto her. She could smell his skin, a clean, masculine scent of soap, and something uniquely him. She watched the way his dark hair fell forward, the intensity in his profile. He was not a monster. He was not her ex. He was just a man, terrified that she had gotten hurt. He finished bandaging her hand, wrapping it securely in gauze. He did not let go. His thumb brushed over her wrist, back and forth, a slow, hypnotic motion. "Thank you," she whispered. He slowly lifted his head. His green eyes, dark and turbulent, locked onto hers. The air in the kitchen crackled. The distance between them was gone. It was just the two of them, suspended in the moment, the blood, the danger, the outside world, it all dissolved. He leaned in. It was slow, just like in the car, but this time, Lena did not pull away. She met him halfway. The first touch of his lips was soft, questioning. It was not the non-kiss in the alley. This was real. It was a slow, deep exploration, a taste. He tasted like coffee and power and a loneliness that matched her own. She sighed into his mouth, and the sound broke his restraint. His hand moved from her wrist to the back of her neck, his fingers tangling in her hair, holding her steady. He deepened the kiss, and it was no longer tentative. It was a deluge. It was all the unsaid words, all the tension, all the fear of the past weeks pouring out of him. He kissed her with a desperate, aching hunger that left her breathless. She clung to him, her good hand gripping his shoulder. He pulled her closer, lifting her from the stool so she was pressed against his body. She could feel the hard, steady beat of his heart against her chest. The kiss turned passionate, but it was underlined with a profound tenderness. He broke away, resting his forehead against hers, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Lena," he whispered, his voice hoarse. It was a prayer. He kissed her again, his lips tracing a path from her mouth to her jaw, down the column of her throat. His touch was reverent. He was not taking. He was worshipping. He lifted her into his arms as if she weighed nothing. She wrapped her legs around his waist, her bandaged hand pressed flat against his chest. He carried her from the kitchen, through the dark living room, and into his bedroom. The room was vast, dominated by a wall of glass overlooking the city. He laid her on the bed, his movements slow, deliberate. He never took his eyes from hers. He did not rush. He unbuttoned his shirt, his gaze locked with hers. He lay down beside her, pulling her close. He allowed her to feel safe. This was not the frantic, selfish fumbling of Troy. This was slow. This was reverence. He kissed her bandaged hand, his lips gentle over the gauze. He mapped her body with slow hands and softer kisses, learning her, cherishing her, and Lena, for the first time in her life, allowed herself to be vulnerable. She let go of the fear. She let go of the past. In the arms of the most dangerous man she had ever met, in his fortress in the sky, she finally felt safe. Later, she lay tangled in his arms, her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. The city lights seemed distant. She was conflicted. She was falling in love with him. But she knew, deep down, that this was a dangerous place to be. She was risking her heart again, in a world built on shadows and violence. She did not know that, hundreds of feet below, the world she had tried to escape was already moving against them. In a downtown precinct, a bored night shift guard walked Troy to a release gate. A high-priced lawyer had arrived an hour earlier, posting an impossibly high bail for a simple breaking and entering charge. The bribe had been astronomical. Troy stepped out into the humid night air, his wrists raw from the cuffs. A black town car was waiting. The window rolled down, and a man he did not recognize looked at him. "You wanted revenge on Viscari," the man said. It was not a question. "You have been targeting his new girl. Our boss finds that interesting. Get in. We want to use Lena to lure Dario out." Troy smiled. A feral, broken expression. He got in the car. 2 days later, Dario received the call. He was in his office, watching Lena read on the couch. She looked peaceful. He had not felt this close to peace in a decade. "Boss." Rocco's voice was grim. "We have a problem. Troy is out, bailed. The money was wired from an account linked to the Gentile family." Dario's blood went cold. The Gentiles, his father's oldest, most brutal rivals. This was not about a crazed ex-boyfriend anymore. This was a war, and Lena was the prize. "He's with them," Dario said, stating the obvious. "It gets worse. They know where she is. They know about the penthouse." Dario stood up, his chair scraping loudly. Lena looked up, her brow furrowed in concern. He became a different person. The warmth he had shown her evaporated, replaced by the cold, hard mask of the Viscari air. He turned away from her, lowering his voice. "Lock down the building. I want double security on every floor. No one in, no one out, not even cleaning staff." He spent the next day locked in his office, his voice a low, angry murmur on the phone. He became withdrawn, distant. The man who had held her with such reverence was gone, replaced by a stranger. Lena felt the change immediately. It was a physical coldness in the apartment. He did not join her for coffee. He did not look at her when he passed. The distance hurt. It felt like rejection. It felt like the pulling away Troy always did right before he became cruel. She retreated to her guest wing, feeling foolish and exposed. She had given him everything, and he was pushing her away. She was sitting in the main living room, trying to read, the silence of the apartment deafening, when she saw it. A plain white envelope. It slid silently, impossibly, under the massive, solid steel front door of the penthouse. Lena froze. Her heart stopped. Rocco was outside that door. There were 2 other men on the elevator. No one could get to this door. She stared at it, her blood turning to ice. Slowly, she got up. She walked over and picked it up. It was heavy, expensive cardstock. Her name was written on the front in neat, printed handwriting. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single white card. There were only 8 words. Run, or he will die because of you. Lena's hand was shaking, the thick white card trembling. Run, or he will die because of you. The words were a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. She stared at the impossible space beneath the heavy steel door. No one could have. The door to his office slid open. Dario stood there, his suit jacket off, his phone in his hand. He looked up, and his entire body went rigid. He did not look at her. He looked at the white card in her hand. The blood drained from his face, leaving behind a cold, terrifying mask of fury. "Where did you get that?" he said. It was not a question. It was a flat, cold command. It came under the door," Lena whispered, her voice barely audible. "Dario, how did it come under the door? Rocco is right outside. Your men are everywhere. How?" He closed his eyes for a single, brief second. When he opened them, the man who had held her, the man who had kissed her with such reverence, was gone. The boss was in his place. He was compromised, Dario said, his voice a low growl. The guard at the service elevator, they bought him. "They? Who are they?" Lena demanded, the note rattling in her grip. "What is going on? You said I was safe here. You said—" "They are the Gentile family," he said, walking slowly toward her. He did not try to take the note. He stopped, keeping a deliberate distance. "My father's rivals, my rivals, an old bloody feud that goes back 50 years. He finally admitted the truth. He laid it all out, the words clinical and sharp. He was not just a businessman. He was Dario Vascari, the head of the Vascari crime family. He explained that his businesses were territory, logistics, and information, all built on a foundation his grandfather had laid with blood and intimidation. Troy was nothing, Dario said, his eyes fixed on hers. He was an insect, but when he attacked you, he made noise. He was arrested. The Gentiles, who are always watching me, saw it. They saw you. They saw me move you here. They saw a weakness, so they paid his bail and allied with him." Lena felt sick. The room, with its priceless views, suddenly felt like a cage at the top of a war zone. "So this," she held up the card, "this is from them. It is a message, not for you, for me, to show me they can get to you, to show me my security is worthless, that the man guarding your door was on their payroll." Lena's head was spinning, but one thought cut through the fear, sharp and bright. "You lied to me." Dario's gaze faltered. "I kept things from you, to protect you." "No," her voice cracked. "You lied. You asked me to trust you. You told me you were not him, that you would not control me. You gave me the elevator code, knowing I was a prisoner of your enemies. You held me. You let me fall for you. You let me—" She could not say it. She choked on the word love. "Lena, it was not a lie. Everything I felt, everything we— Was it real?" she cried, tears of betrayal streaming down her face. "Or was I just something you wanted to protect? A good thing to keep safe in your glass box? You are devastated," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "But not because I am in danger. You are devastated because your world is not safe, because they found a crack in your fortress." She looked at him, the man who had saved her, the man she had given herself to. "I am not betrayed because you are dangerous, Dario. I am betrayed because you asked for my trust, and you gave me a lie." "It was not a lie," he insisted, taking a step toward her. "Stop." She held up a hand. "I cannot do this. I cannot live like this. I cannot be the reason. I cannot be the person who gets you killed. I will not let them touch you. You do not understand." She shouted, the sound echoing in the massive, silent room. "You do not get to make that choice. This is your world. Guns and blood and compromised guards, and families who want you dead. I ran from a monster, and I ran right into a war." She turned from him and marched into the guest wing. She grabbed her duffel bag, the same one she had packed when he brought her here, and began throwing her few belongings into it. Dario followed her, standing in the doorway, his face a mask of stone. "Lena, do not do this. You will not be safe out there." "And I am safe in here?" She zipped the bag with a vicious tug. "This note proves I am not, at least out there. I am on my own. I am not a target. I am not—" "Your weakness." She walked past him, her shoulder brushing his. He did not move to stop her. He could have locked the elevator, called his men, but he had given her his word. He would not control her. She stalked to the elevator, her hands shaking so badly she could barely punch in the code he had given her. 9-2. The door slid open. She stepped inside without looking back. "Lena!" his voice called out, raw and desperate. She met his eyes from across the foyer. He looked broken. "I cannot," she whispered. "I cannot live in a world where I am waiting for the other side of that door to kill you. Even if you make me feel safe, you are not." The doors slid shut, sealing him away. Dario Vascari stood alone in his penthouse, the silence a crushing weight. He let her go. He had to. Forcing her to stay, even for her own safety, would have made him the monster she believed him to be. He had made her a promise, and he had kept it, even though it felt like tearing his own heart out. He turned, walked to his desk, and picked up the phone. His voice was cold as ice. "She is in the wind," he said to Rocco. "Do not let her see you. I want a 4-man team on her." Full invisible tale. The moment the Gentiles make a move, the second they show themselves, you take them, and you call me. Lena returned to her apartment. The new steel door and the high-tech locks Dario had installed felt like a bitter irony. She was a prisoner in her own home, but this time, she was a prisoner of fear. She spent 2 days in the suffocating silence. She did not eat. She did not sleep. She just sat on her couch, staring at the walls. Every creak in the hallway made her jump. She was haunted. She was free from Dario's world, but she was miserable. She missed him. She missed the infuriating, quiet way he watched her. She missed his scent. She missed the memory of his hands, gentle and careful, bandaging her palm. She remembered the kiss, that desperate, slow-burning kiss that had felt like a promise. She had been safer in the arms of a Mafia boss than she had ever been in her life. Now, she was alone, and she had never felt more terrified. On the 3rd day, she knew she could not hide forever. She was out of food. She had to live. She had to prove that she could survive without him. She grabbed her purse, took a deep breath, and unlocked the 4 heavy bolts on her door. She walked to the small corner bodega, her shoulders hunched, her eyes scanning every car, every face. The city, which had once felt anonymous, now felt full of threats. She bought milk, bread, and an apple, her hands shaking as she paid the cashier. She walked out, clutching the small paper bag, and started the short walk back. She was a block from her building. She was going to make it. A black van, the kind with no side windows, screeched to a halt beside her, mounting the curb and blocking her path. The side door slid open. "Miss me? Lena?" She froze. Troy. His face was a patchwork of yellowing bruises and maniacal glee before she could even draw breath to scream. 2 large men grabbed her from behind. She dropped the bag, milk exploding on the pavement. One man clamped a heavy hand over her mouth. She fought, kicking and scratching, but they were too strong. They threw her into the dark, metal interior of the van. The last thing she saw before the door slammed shut was Troy's smiling face. Across the street, in a parked sedan, a man spoke calmly into a concealed microphone. "Packages mobile. Black van, heading east on Mercer. Gentile plates. They have her." Dario was in his penthouse office, staring at a live feed from the surveillance team. When the call came, he watched the van pull away. For a full 10 seconds, he did not move. He just watched the vehicle that held her disappear around a corner. Then he exploded. He swept his desk clean in a single, violent motion. Laptop, papers, coffee cup, it all crashed to the floor. "Rocco," he roared. His lieutenant was through the door in a second. "They are tracking. We have a location. It looks like the old Red Hook shipping warehouse. Gentile territory." "Get the cars," Dario said, his voice a low, lethal snarl. He walked to a hidden panel in his wall. Pressing his thumb to a scanner, it opened, revealing a collection of weapons that made it clear what his family business truly was. He strapped a handgun to his hip and took a tactical knife. "Boss, the team is ready to breach." "No." Dario cut him off. He turned, his green eyes black with a cold, pure rage. "This is not a team operation. This is mine. Your men will secure the perimeter. They will lock it down. No one gets out." He checked the magazine on his weapon. "Nobody touches her. Nobody goes near her. I will be the only one who walks through that door. I am bringing her home." Lena awoke to the smell of rust and cold water. Her head throbbed. She was in a vast, dark space. A single bare bulb hung from the high ceiling, illuminating a small circle of the filthy concrete floor. She was tied to a metal chair, her wrists and ankles already raw from the ropes. "Look who's awake!" Troy's voice echoed. He stepped into the light. He was pacing back and forth, holding a gun, his movements jerky and energized. "This is all your fault, you know," he sneered, jabbing the gun in her direction. "You ran. You hid. You made me look like a fool. And then you found him. The prince of the city." "Troy, please," she whispered. "Shut up. He's coming. The Gentiles. They're smart. They knew he would come. He's going to walk in here, ready to trade his entire empire for you. And the moment he does..." Troy laughed, a high-pitched, broken sound. "We get to kill him, and then I get to kill you. That is enough, boy." A new figure stepped out of the shadows. He was older, in an expensive suit, his face calm. This was not a strung-out ex-boyfriend. This was a man with real power. "He is coming," the man said, looking at Lena, "but not for a trade. He is coming for a war." The words had barely left his mouth when the warehouse erupted. It was not a breach. It was a declaration. The massive metal loading door at the far end of the warehouse exploded inward, blown off its hinges. A black armored sedan roared into the space, its headlights blinding them, and skidded to a stop. Gunfire echoed from all sides as the perimeter guards engaged Rocco's team outside. Dario stepped out of the car. He was alone. He wore no body armor, just a black jacket and a face of absolute death. "He is mine!" Troy screamed, raising his gun. The Gentile capo raised his own weapon, aiming at Dario. "You were always arrogant, Viscari, just like your father." Dario did not speak. He moved. He was not a brawler. He was a predator. He fired 2 shots, hitting the capo in the chest before the man could even react. The man crumpled. Troy, in a panic, fired wildly. Dario ducked behind a pillar, the bullets sparking off the concrete. He moved through the shadows while Troy reloaded, his movements silent and fluid. "Come on, Viscari! Come and get her!" Troy yelled. Grabbing Lena and pulling her chair in front of him as a shield, he put the gun to her head. "Show yourself!" Dario emerged from the darkness 20 feet away. "Let her go." "Troy." "Or what? You will shoot me? You will shoot through her?" Troy laughed. Another Gentile gunman appeared on a catwalk above, aiming his rifle at Dario. Dario saw him. He also saw Troy's finger tightening on the trigger. He had no choice. Dario dove to the side, firing up at the rifleman. The shot hit. The man fell. But Dario had exposed himself. Troy fired. The bullet hit Dario high in the shoulder, spinning him around. He grunted, falling to one knee. Dario! Lena screamed. Troy smiled, his aim steadying on Dario's unmoving form. Goodbye, pretty boy. He was too focused on Dario. He did not see the tactical knife leave Dario's left hand. It flew through the air, silent and true, and embedded itself in Troy's gun hand. Troy screamed, dropping the weapon. Dario was on his feet in an instant, ignoring the blood pouring from his shoulder. He closed the distance in 3 strides. This was not a firefight, it was an execution. He landed a single, brutal punch to Troy's throat, crushing his windpipe. As Troy gagged, clawing at his neck, Dario retrieved his knife and ended it. Cold. Precise. The warehouse fell silent. The only sound was Lena's sobbing. Dario stumbled, a new, dark stain spreading across his side from a bullet he had not even registered. He was losing blood, fast, but he ignored it. He walked to her, his movement stiff, his face pale. He knelt in front of her, his entire body trembling from blood loss and adrenaline. He produced another knife and sawed through the thick ropes on her wrists. She was free. Her hands flew to his face, her fingers tracing the hard line of his jaw. She was weeping, her tears washing away the blood on his skin. You are hurt. You are bleeding. Oh God, Dario. He cupped her face, his own bloody, trembling hands smearing her cheeks. He looked into her eyes, his gaze full of a desperate, agonizing love. You kissed the wrong man, he said, his voice a hoarse whisper. But I have never wanted to be right about anything more. She crashed against him, her mouth finding his. It was not a gentle kiss. It was a desperate, fierce claiming. It was a kiss of fear and of love and of absolute ownership. She was kissing him with the full knowledge of who and what he was, and she did not care. He was hers. He kissed her back, his strength finally failing. He sagged against her, his full weight becoming too much. Dario? She felt the warm gush of blood from his side. Dario! He collapsed, pulling her down with him. She cradled his head in her lap on the filthy concrete floor. Her hands pressed desperately to the wound in his side. No, she sobbed, rocking him. No, you do not get to do this. You do not get to save me and then leave me. Stay with me, stay awake. Rocco and his men ran in, securing the area. Boss, get a medic. Dario's eyes fluttered, his hand weakly finding hers. Lena gripped it, her knuckles white. She refused to let him die. She stayed with him, in the ambulance, her hands never leaving his wound, in the sterile, private hospital he owned. She sat by his bedside, a ghost in bloody clothes. The nurses tried to make her leave. She looked at them with a coldness that would have made Dario proud. She did not sleep. She did not eat. She sat for days, holding his hand, a silent, furious guardian, refusing to let the shadows claim him. The first sensation was pain. It was not the sharp, hot tear of the bullet, but a dull, deep throb that seemed to pulse in time with the rhythmic, electronic beep that filled the room. The second sensation was weight. Something heavy, but warm, was resting on his chest. Dario Vascari's eyes opened. The room was dark, lit only by the green and blue glow of medical monitors. He smelled antiseptic and sterile gauze. He was alive. He tried to move his left arm and a sharp, pulling pain shot from his side. He looked down. The weight on his chest was Lena. She was asleep, fully clothed, her body curled awkwardly in the narrow hospital bed. Her head was resting on his sternum, and her left hand was fisted in the thin fabric of his hospital shirt, gripping it with a desperate strength, even in sleep. She looked exhausted, her face pale and her eyes shadowed, but she was there. She had not run. She had stayed. He lifted his right hand, his movement slow and stiff, and carefully touched her hair. It was soft. At his touch, she sprang awake, a choked gasp leaving her. Her eyes, wide and terrified, flew to his. For a full 3 seconds, she just stared, as if seeing a ghost. "Dario," she whispered, her voice raw. He could not speak. He just looked at her. The relief that washed over her face was a physical thing. It was not a gentle dawn. It was a dam breaking. A sob tore from her, a sound of such profound, agonizing release that it hurt him more than the wound in his side. She did not cry loudly. She collapsed forward, burying her face against his good shoulder, her entire body shaking with silent, racking sobs. He held her, his arm wrapped around her, his hand pressing her head to his chest. He held her as she wept for all the fear, for the warehouse, for the blood, and for the simple, devastating fact that he had woken up. He stared at the ceiling, the steady beep of the monitor the only sound, and realized that her grip on his shirt was the only thing anchoring him to the world. The days that followed were a blur of pain medication and tense silence. Lena refused to leave. She slept on the small, uncomfortable cot in the corner of his private room. She was a silent, furious guardian, her presence a warning to anyone who entered. The gossip in the underworld, however, was not silent. It erupted. Dario Vescari, the untouchable heir, had been shot. He had walked into a trap, alone, for a woman. The Vescari empire had been cracked wide open, not by a rival, but by a waitress. When he was finally released, transported back to the penthouse under heavy guard, the new reality of his life set in. He was healing, but his world was fractured. Rocco stood in the penthouse office, his face grim. "Boss, the operation at the warehouse was a success. The Gentile leadership is gone. Troy is gone, but the cleanup, it is complicated." Dario sat behind his desk, his side tightly bandaged. Lena was in the other room. The sound of her online class lecture a quiet murmur in the background. "What is it? Rocco?" "The other families, the Carisi brothers, specifically. They are making noise. They say the Vescari name is weak." Rocco looked uncomfortable. "They say you are soft, that you traded your father's legacy for a woman. They see your vulnerability as a weakness they can exploit." Dario looked past Rocco, through the glass wall of his office, to where Lena sat on the sofa. She was chewing on the end of a pen, her brow furrowed in concentration. She felt his gaze and looked up, offering him a small, hesitant smile that lit her entire face. Weakness. "They are right," Dario said quietly. Rocco's head snapped up. "Boss? It is a weakness. Rocco, this life, this inheritance." He gestured to the city, to the empire. "I cannot have this, and have her. The two cannot exist in the same space. One will always try to destroy the other." "What are you saying?" Dario stood, wincing, and walked to the window. "I am saying I am done. The part of this business that lives in the shadow, the part that cost my father his life and nearly cost me mine, it is yours." Rocco was stunned. "Dario, you cannot just—" "I can." Dario turned, his eyes clear and cold, the old boss back for one final moment. The shipping lines, the import logistics, the territories, all of it, the old business, as my father called it, it is your burden now. You're the most loyal man I have ever known. You will run it, and you will run it fairly. In exchange, I want peace. I want distance. My name is to be removed from every ledger, every account. I am out. And what will you keep? Rocco asked, his voice low. The legitimate holdings, the Emberline, the real estate portfolio, the parts of this business that can bear the light. He looked back at Lena. I'm keeping the parts I can live with. That night, he found her on the terrace. The city lights were bright, but she was looking away, toward the darkness of the river. You have been quiet all day, she said, not turning. Rocco left hours ago. He looked like he was going to a funeral. In a way, he was, Dario said, standing beside her. He leaned on the railing, the cold air biting at his face. I gave it to him, the family, the business, all of it. Lena turned, her eyes wide. You mean you are stepping down? Relief warred with a sudden, crushing guilt on her face. Dario, you did that for me, because of what I said in the apartment about your world. No. His voice was firm, stopping her. He turned to face her, taking her hands. I did not do this for you. Lena, I did this because of you. There is a difference. She looked confused. I do not understand. This life, I never chose it. It was given to me. It was a burden I accepted because I thought it was my duty. I spent 10 years being the man my father wanted me to be, the man the family needed. I was cold. I was hard. I was empty. He squeezed her hands, And then you walked into my bar. You were terrified of the world, but you were brave enough to kiss a stranger in an alley. You were a good thing that had been hurt, and I wanted to protect that." He touched her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear she did not know had fallen. "You did not change me, Lena. You did not fix me. You just reminded me. You reminded me who I used to be. Before all this, a man who wanted to build things, not just own them. A man who wanted a home, not just a fortress. I am walking away because I want a future I can live with. You just reminded me what one looked like." Life began to change. The heavy, oppressive weight that had filled the penthouse began to lift. The armed guards at the elevator disappeared, replaced by a simple, discreet security detail that Rocco managed from a distance. Lena started to rebuild her own life. She re-enrolled in her final semester of community college, finishing her classes online. She was no longer just hiding or surviving. She was planning. She spent her afternoons researching local nonprofits, looking for a place where she could work with people who had run from situations like hers. She was building a future that was entirely her own, separate from his, but running parallel. Their mornings became peaceful. The sound of angry, muted phone calls from his office was replaced by the quiet sounds of a kettle whistling and the rustle of a newspaper. He would drink his coffee, she would drink her tea, and they would sit in silence. A comfortable, easy quiet that felt more intimate than any conversation. The fear that had been her constant companion for years finally began to recede. The kisses they shared were no longer tinged with desperation or the metallic taste of fear. They were warm. They were free. She would kiss him goodbye when he left for a meeting about his real estate holdings, and he would kiss her hello when he returned, his arms wrapping around her waist, pulling her close, his lips finding hers with a gentle, reassuring familiarity. One night, she was studying. Her notes spread across the massive dining table. When he came in, holding a set of keys. "Put your coat on," he said, a rare, small smile playing on his lips. "It is almost 10 o'clock, she said. "I have something to show you. Trust me." She drove with him for nearly an hour, out of the city, away from the noise and the concrete, into the dark, rolling hills to the north. He turned down a long gravel driveway, the branches of old trees brushing the top of the car. He stopped in front of a house. It was not a modern glass box. It was an old stone and wood farmhouse, completely renovated. It had a wide front porch, dark blue shutters, and warm light glowing from the windows. "Dario, what is this?" she whispered. Getting out of the car, the air smelled like pine and damp earth. "I bought it about 6 months ago," he admitted, his voice quiet. He walked to the front door and unlocked it. "I bought it under a shell company. It was an escape plan. I suppose, a fantasy, a place I thought I might run to one day, if the world became too much." He pushed the door open and gestured for her to go inside. The interior was warm, filled with comfortable furniture, overflowing bookshelves, and a massive stone fireplace. It smelled like cedar and fresh paint. The penthouse, the Ember Line. "They are part of that world," he said, standing behind her in the foyer. "They are tied to my father, to the blood. They are stained. You deserve something untouched by blood. Lena, you deserve a home. Let me give you that." Lena walked into the center of the living room, her hand pressed to her mouth. She looked at the cozy kitchen, the worn wooden floors, the staircase that led up to quiet bedrooms. This was not a safe house. This was not a fortress. This was a life. He was not offering her protection. He was offering her normalcy. He was offering her a future, a real one, built on solid ground. She turned to him, and the emotional dam she had been carefully maintaining finally broke. The tears came, hot and fast, tears of gratitude so profound they stole her breath. She did not sob, she just wept, her shoulders shaking. He was across the room in a second, his arms wrapping around her, pulling her tightly against his chest. She buried her face in his sweater, clinging to him. "This is it. Lena," he whispered into her hair, his voice thick. "This is our beginning." That night, they did not return to the city. He built a fire in the massive stone fireplace, the crackle of the logs the only sound in the house. They sat on the thick rug, shoulders touching, watching the flames. The tension that had lived between them for months, the fear, the passion, the violence, had finally settled. What was left was something new, something quiet and infinitely strong. He turned to her, his hand coming up to cup her face. His gaze was intense, but all the coldness was gone, replaced by a warmth that enveloped her. He did not kiss her. He just looked at her, as if memorizing her. She leaned in, her lips finding his. The kiss was slow, tender, and deep. It was not a kiss of hunger, it was a kiss of recognition. He laid her back on the rug, his movements unhurried, his eyes never leaving hers. This was not the desperate passion of the penthouse. This was a slow, deliberate act of worship. He undressed her with a reverence that made her feel cherished, not just desired. Every touch of his hand on her skin was a promise. When they came together, it was quiet. It was sacred. Their hands clasped between them, fingers locking. Their foreheads pressed together, and they breathed in each other's air, two halves of a whole finally finding salvation in the quiet dark. But in the city they had left behind, the shadows were rearranging. In the back room of a dark social club, a young, ambitious capo named Angelo Carisi slammed his glass on the table. He had been waiting for the Gentiles to weaken the Vescari Empire for years. And now, with Dario gone, Rocco was in charge. Rocco, who was practical, boring, and loyal. He just walks away, Angelo spat. He tears the city apart, kills a dozen men, and just retires to a farm? It is an insult. Rocco has made peace, an older man cautioned. He offered us a new percentage. I do not want a percentage. I want it all. Angelo snarled. He paced the room. Vescari thinks he is out. He thinks he is safe. But he is a fool. He left his one weakness outside the fortress. Rocco is loyal to Dario. Yes, but Dario, he is loyal to her. He picked up a grainy surveillance photo from the table. It was Lena, walking out of a coffee shop, a textbook under her arm. You want to control Dario? You want to break Rocco's new regime? Angelo smiled, a cold, sharp expression. You do not need an army. You just need the last piece. The new piece was fragile, but it was real. They had been at the farmhouse for 2 months, and the rhythms of a normal life had begun to take root. The city felt 1,000 miles away. Dario was overseeing the final, legitimate renovations of the Emberline, turning the dark, shadowy bar into a bright, upscale restaurant. He was building, not ruling. Lena was volunteering at a local women's shelter, her quiet strength and empathy making her a natural fit. Dario was in the city, meeting with a contractor at the restaurant. When the message arrived, it was not a text, it was not a call. It was a single, plain white envelope, just like the one that had been slipped under his penthouse door. It was handed to him by a new busboy he did not recognize. His blood went cold. He ripped it open. Inside was not a note. It was a photograph, printed on high-quality paper. It was Lena, from that morning, standing on the porch of their farmhouse, drinking her tea, on the back. 5 words were written in the same neat, printed hand. Sanctuary is an illusion. A.C. Angelo Carisi, someone from his past, someone he had trusted with the new, quiet security protocols, had betrayed him. Someone from Rocco's inner circle had sold their location for money or power. He did not run. He walked calmly out of the restaurant, got into his car, and dialed Rocco. His voice was dead, devoid of all emotion. He found her, Dario said. Dario, Rocco's voice was frantic. We had a leak. One of my captains. He is gone. I am sending my men to the house right now. They will be there in 10 minutes. They are already there, Dario said. He hung up and pressed his foot to the floor. The drive from the city, the one that usually took an hour, he made in 41 minutes. He was not driving to a safe house. He was driving to a war zone. He pulled up the long gravel driveway. The house was silent. The front door was ajar. He pushed it open. The house, their sanctuary, had been ransacked. The bookshelves were overturned, the sofa cushions slashed, the warm, cozy home violated. They were sending a message. This was not a kidnapping, it was a demolition. On the kitchen island, where he and Lena had shared coffee just that morning, sat a laptop. It was open. A video file was playing on a loop. Lena, she was bound to a chair in a dark, damp room. She was terrified, but she was not crying. Her eyes were fixed on the camera, full of a defiant fury that made his chest ache. A man stepped into the frame, Angelo Carisi. He was young, ambitious, and smiling. "Vescari," Angelo said, his voice slick and confident. "I have to admit, I admire your taste. She is beautiful. I see why you gave up an empire for her." He stroked Lena's hair. She flinched, pulling away from his touch. "You took everything from us when you killed the Gentiles," Angelo continued. "You consolidated power and then you just left. You retired. You left Rocco, that glorified bodyguard, in charge, an insult to men like me who have earned our place." He leaned in, his smile widening. "So here is the deal. You are going to give me what is left, your legitimate holdings, the Emberline, the real estate, every dollar in every offshore account you thought you hid, and your freedom. You are going to sign it all over to me. Then, you are going to walk into my trap, and I am going to put a bullet in your head." The video ended. A phone number was taped to the screen. Dario stood in his ruined kitchen for a full minute, the silence of the house pressing in on him. The boss he thought he had buried was back, rising up from the ashes, cold and focused. He picked up his own phone and dialed the number. Angelo answered on the first ring. "Dim. I am impressed. She is unharmed," Dario stated. "For now. Do you accept the terms?" "I do. Everything, all of it," Angelo laughed, a short, sharp bark. "I knew it. You are pathetic. The old Vescari tannery. Midnight, come alone. You will sign the transfers, and then we will see if she lives. If she has a single bruise on her when I arrive, I will burn your entire family to the ground," Dario said, his voice a low promise. "I do not care what it costs." He hung up. He looked at the wreckage of his new life. He had one last call to make. He had tried to walk away clean. He saw now that there was no clean way out. There was only fire. He dialed a number he had memorized years ago and never used. "Detective Miller, homicide." "Detective," Dario said, his voice calm. "My name is Dario Vescari. I believe you have a file on me." There was a stunned silence on the other end. "Vescari, this is a surprise. I'm going to give you your entire career. Detective, I'm giving you Angelo Carisi, the rest of his crew, and the evidence to link them to the Gentile murders and a dozen other cases. I am giving you the Vescari organization, what is left of it. I am giving you the entire criminal web of this city, on a silver platter." "Why?" Miller asked, suspicious. "Because they have someone I love, and I am dismantling the game." Dario gave him the address of the tannery. "I am walking in at midnight. I do not know if I am walking out, but you will have your men surrounding that building. You do not move until you hear shots fired. When you do, you burn it to the ground. You arrest every man standing. You seize every asset. The account numbers and digital keys you will need are being transferred to your secure server right now. Vescari, this is... You are turning yourself in, too," Miller said. "I am giving you the monsters," Dario replied. "Do what you want with me. Just get her out alive." He hung up. He did not call Rocco. He did not arm himself with heavy weapons. He just took the tactical knife from the sheath on his ankle, the one he had never stopped carrying, and slid it into his belt, under his jacket. Then he walked out of the house and drove toward the end of his life. The tannery stank of chemicals and decay. It was a vast iron and brick cavern, abandoned for 20 years. Dario walked into the center of the room, his hands raised where Angelo could see them. An impressive performance. Angelo called from a high metal catwalk. Dario looked up. Lena was there, tied to a steel support beam. Below her, Angelo sat at a folding table, a laptop and a stack of papers waiting. He was flanked by 6 men. "I am here," Dario said. "The deal was, I see her. I sign. Let her go. I do not think so. Angelo smiled. You sign first. Dario walked to the table. He signed every paper. He entered the passwords for the digital transfers. He systematically and calmly gave away his entire fortune, the last of his father's empire. It is done, Dario said, pushing the laptop back. Your turn. Angelo laughed. He stood up, pulling his gun from his waistband. You really are a fool. Dario, just like your father. He thought he could rule with honor. You think you can leave with love. You are both wrong. He cocked the hammer. You die. She dies, and I take it all. No, Dario said. No? Angelo mocked. You wanted my empire, my money, my freedom. Dario's voice was quiet, but it filled the vast, dead space. You took the deal, but you miscalculated. You assumed my life was the only thing I was willing to trade. Dario did not move toward Angelo. He moved toward Lena. In one fluid motion, he pulled the knife from his belt and threw it, not at Angelo, at the heavy, frayed rope holding a bundle of iron pipes on a pulley system above the catwalk. The knife blade severed the rope. The pipes, weighing half a ton, crashed down onto the catwalk, right where Angelo's men were standing. The structure screamed, buckling. Now! Dario roared at Lena, who had been watching him. Her eyes wide. Angelo, thrown off balance, fired. The first bullet went wide. The second hit Dario high in the chest, a brutal, staggering impact. Dario grunted, the force throwing him back, but he did not fall. He kept moving toward Lena. He was a dead man, but he was still walking. He reached the beam, cutting the ropes on her hands with a second, smaller knife from his boot. Go! He choked, shoving her toward the exit. Blood was pouring from his chest. Dario! She screamed, grabbing him. Angelo scrambled from the wreckage of the catwalk, his face a mask of insane rage. He raised his gun for the final shot. You will not! Dario shoved Lena behind him, shielding her with his body, and met Angelo's charge. He did not have the strength to fight. He only had the strength to hold on. He grabbed Angelo's gun hand, forcing it away as the man fired wildly. Dario took another bullet, this one in his side, but he did not let go. He held Angelo in a final, crushing embrace. His teeth gritted, his body failing. He drove the smaller knife into Angelo's side. Angelo screamed and fired again. Point blank, the world went white. Dario collapsed, pulling Angelo down with him. The silence that fell was absolute. Then, Lena's scream. She scrambled to him, rolling him off the dead capo. Dario, no, stay with me. His eyes were open but vacant, staring at the ceiling. His chest was a ruin. You do not get to leave me, she sobbed, pressing her hands to the worst wound. You do not die. I will not let you. She grabbed him under the arms and began to drag him. He was a dead weight, but she did not stop. She pulled him, inch by inch, over the filthy concrete floor, toward the door, toward the air, toward life. Stay with me? Stay alive! The sound of sirens, faint at first, grew into a roar. The doors of the tannery burst open, flooding the room with red and blue light. Police in tactical gear swarmed the building. Lena did not even look up. She was covered in his blood, her face pressed to his, her voice a raw whisper. I love you. Do not you dare leave me. I love you. A paramedic gently pulled her away. Miss, we have to... Save him, she begged, her eyes wild. Save him! Months later, the sun rose over the farmhouse. The garden was overgrown, wild with vegetables. The air was cool and smelled of fresh earth. Dario Vescari stood in the middle of the garden, a shovel in his hand. He moved stiffly. The scars on his chest and side were thick and purple. He was no longer the boss. He was no longer anything. After the arrest, and after his testimony, the Vescari Empire was officially dismantled. The city's underworld was in chaos. Dario Vescari was officially anonymous. He was just a man, growing vegetables. The front door opened, and Lena came out. She was dressed in a simple blouse and skirt, her bag over her shoulder, ready for her job at the non-profit. She walked over to him, a mug of tea in her hand. She stopped in front of him and smiled, a quiet, peaceful smile that reached her eyes. She kissed him, a soft, Morning kiss. "Good morning," she said. She touched the scar on his chest, her fingers tracing the healed wound. "Good morning," he replied, his voice still hoarse from the damage to his throat. "I have to go," she said. "The fundraising drive is today." She looked at him, at the man who had torn down the world for her, now standing in a patch of dirt. "I do not care who you were," she said softly, her hand flat against his heart. "You are mine now." He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her waist, burying his face in her hair. He held her, breathing her in like she was the air he needed to live. "You kissed the wrong man, Lena," he whispered, his voice thick with an emotion that would never leave him. He pulled back, kissing her forehead. "But I became the right one. For you." They stood there for a long time, holding each other as the light of the golden dawn washed over them. Their silhouettes, one scarred and the other strong, were proof that love, even in the darkest, most violent corners of the world, could change everything. Thank you so much for listening to this story. "You kissed the wrong man," said the Mafia boss. "I would love to hear from you. So please comment below and tell me where you are listening from. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Mafia Romance Stories for more. Let me know your thoughts on Lena and Dario in English, and I look forward to sharing another story with you soon.